So one of the topics we'll talk about in class will be dollarized countries. And we'll talk about a number of political, social, and economic impacts to those countries being dollarized, pros and cons, the history of how they came to be dollarized, and a lot of other nuances. But before we begin, we need to establish some basic vocabulary about what dollarized means. And there are really 4 or maybe 5 types of dollarized countries in the world. One of those types is a country that uses its own currency locally, but that currency is indexed or what people call pegged to a foreign currency. A good example of this is Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, they have their own currency, but it's pegged to the US dollar. You don't use 10s and 20 US dollar notes up and down the street. In commerce, you use the Hong Kong note, but it's tied through the currency board to the US dollar. Another example, kind of at the other end of the spectrum, would be Ecuador. Ecuador doesn't currently use its own local currency, but uses the dollar. It's the legal tender in the country of Ecuador and used for commerce and banking and financial services in that country. And so $10 bills, $5 bills, $20 bills, $1 bills, and coins are used in that country just like they would be in the streets of US cities. An example that's in the middle would be a country that has its own currency, but it may co-circulate that currency with another foreign currency like the dollar or the euro. You actually see this in some towns in the United States, where on the border with Canada, merchants might equally accept US dollars or Canadian dollars. That's what those merchants do. It isn't an official government policy that those other currencies are legal tender. But in other countries, they do the same thing. They co-circulate the different currencies of one or more countries, and the local government may even take steps to make those foreign currencies readily available. You find this in a lot of countries where there's a lot of tourism. So if you were to go to the Bahamas, you'd find Bahamian dollars, US dollars, equally used up and down the streets and in commerce and banking. A final example is countries that are dollarized, but they don't actually use the US dollar. They might use another country's currency. So a country might use the Swiss franc, or it might use the Deutsche Mark, or might use the euro or the yen. In that case, the country is using or has a connection to a foreign currency that isn't their own, but it's referred to as dollarized even if the dollar isn't actually being used. If you'd like to learn more about this topic, Chapter 2 in Benjamin Cohen's The Future of Money has a great discussion of this topic.